Neural control and coordination. As you know, the function of organ systems in our body must be coordinated to maintain homeostasis. Coordination is the process through which two or more organs interact and complement the function of one another. For example, when we do physical exercises, the energy demand is increased for maintaining and increased muscular activity. The supply of oxygen is also increased. The increased supply of oxygen necessitates an increase in rate of respiration, heartbeat, and increased blood flow via blood vessels. When physical exercise is stopped, the activity of nerves, lungs, heart, and kidney gradually return to their normal conditions. Thus, the function of muscles, lungs, heart, blood vessels, kidney, and other organs are coordinated while performing physical exercise. In our body, the neural system and endocrine system jointly coordinate and integrate all the activities of organs so that they function in a synchronized fashion. The neural system provides an organized network of point-to-point connection for a quick coordination. The endocrine system provides chemical integration through hormones. In this chapter, you will learn about the neural system of human mechanism of neural coordination like transmission of nerve impulse, impulse conduction across a synapse, and physiology of reflex action. Neural system. The neural system of all animals is composed of highly specialized cells called neuron, which can detect, receive, transmit different kinds of stimuli. The neural organization is very simple in lower invertebrates. For example, in Hydra, it is composed of network of neurons. The neural system is better organized in insect, the where the brain is present along with number of ganglia and neural tissue. The vertebrates have more developed neural system. Human neural system. The human neural system is divided into two parts: the central nervous system, that is CNS, the peripheral nervous system, that is PNS. The central nervous system includes the brain and the spinal cord and is the site of information processing and control. The PNS comprise all the nerves of the body associated with the CNS, brain and spinal cord. The nerve fibers of PNS are of two types: afferent fibers and efferent fibers. The afferent fiber transmit impulse from the tissue organ to CNS, and efferent fiber transmit regulatory impulse from the CNS to concerned peripheral tissue organ. The PNS is divided into two divisions called somatic neural system and autonomic neural system. The somatic neural system relay impulse from the CNS to a skeletal muscle, while the autonomic neural system transmit impulse from the CNS to involuntary organ and smooth muscle of the body. The autonomic neural system is further classified into sympathetic neural system and parasympathetic neural system. The visceral nervous system is a part of peripheral nervous system and it's comprised whole complex of nerve, fiber, ganglia, and plexus by which impulse travels from central nervous system to the viscera and from viscera to the central nervous system. Neurons are a structure and functional unit of neural system. A neuron is a microscopic structure composed of three major parts, namely cell body, dendrites, and axon. The cell body contains cytoplasm with typical cell organelles and certain granular bodies called nasal granules, short fiber which branch repeatedly and project out of the cell body also contain nasal granules called dendrites. These fiber transmit impulse towards the cell body. The axon is a long fiber, the distal end of which is branch. Each branch terminates as a bulb-like structure called synaptic knob, which possesses synaptic vesicles containing chemicals called neurotransmitter. The axon transmits nerve impulse away from cell body to a synapse or a neuromuscular junction. Based on number of axon and dendrites, the neuron are divided into three types, that is multipolar with one axon and two or more dendrites found in cerebral cortex, bipolar with one axon and one dendrites found in retina of eye, and unipolar cell body with one axon only found usually in the embryonic stage. There are two types of axon, namely myelinated and non-myelinated. The myelinated nerve fiber are enveloped with Schwann cell which form myelin sheath around the axon. The gap between two adjacent myelin sheath is called node of Ranvier. Myelinated nerve fiber found in spinal and cranial nerves. Unmyelinated nerve fiber is enclosed by Schwann cell which do not form myelin sheath around the axon and is commonly found in autonomous and somatic neural system. Generation and conduction of nerve impulse. Neurons are excitable cells because their membranes are in polarized state. Do you know why the membranes of neuron is polarized? Different types of ion channels are present on neural membrane. These ion channels are selectively permeable to different ions. When a neuron is not conducting any impulse that is resting, the axonal membrane is comparatively more permeable to potassium ion, nearly impermeable to sodium ions. Similarly, the membrane is impermeable to negatively charged proteins present in the exoplasm. Consequently, the exoplasm inside the axon contain high concentration of potassium and negatively charged protein and low concentration of sodium ion. In in contrast, the fluid outside the axon contains low concentration of potassium ion, a high concentration of sodium ion, and thus form a concentration gradient. The ionic gradient across a resting membrane is maintained by active transport of ions by the sodium-potassium pump, which transport three sodium outward and two potassium into the cell. As a result, the outer surface of the axonal membrane possesses a positive charge while the inner surface becomes negatively charged, therefore is polarized. The electrical potential difference across the resting plasma membrane is called resting potential. You might be curious to know about the mechanism of generation of nerve impulse and conduction along an axon. When a stimulus is applied at a site on a on the polarized membrane, the membrane at the site become freely permeable to sodium ion. This leads to rapid influx of sodium ion followed by reversal of polarity at that site, that is the outer surface of the membrane become negatively charged and the inner side become positively charged. The polarity of the membrane at the site is thus reversed and hence depolarized. The electrical potential difference across the plasma membrane at site A is called action potential, which in fact termed as nerve impulse. At site immediately ahead the axon, example site B, membrane has positive charge on the outer surface and negative charge on the inner surface. As a result, current flow on the inner surface from side A to B. On the outer surface, current flows from B to A to complete the circuit of current flow. Hence, the polarity at site is reversed and action potential is generated at site B. Thus, the impulse action potential generated at site A arrives at site B. The sequence is repeated along the length of axon and consequently the impulse is conducted. The rise in stimulus induced permeability of sodium ion is extremely short-lived. It is quickly followed by rise in permeability of potassium ion, which within a fraction of a second, potassium diffuse outside the membrane and restore the resting potential of the membrane at the site of excitation, and fiber becomes one more responsive to further stimulation. Here is the figure. This is side A, and this is side B. Inside A to B, outside B to A current flow to complete the circuit of current flow. Transmission of impulse. A nerve impulse is transmitted from one neuron to another through junction called synapse. A synapse is formed by membranes of a presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neuron, which may or may not be separated by a gap called synaptic clips. There are two types of synapse, namely electrical synapse and chemical synapse. At electrical synapse, the membrane of pre and postsynaptic neurons are in very close proximity. Electrical current can flow directly from one neuron to the other across these synapses. Transmission of impulse across electrical synapse is very similar to impulse conduction along a single axon. Impulse transmission across electrical synapse is always faster than across chemical synapse. Electrical synapse are rare in our system. At a chemical synapse, the membrane of pre and postsynaptic neuron are separated by fluid-filled space called synaptic cleft. Figure 21.3. Do you know how the presynaptic neuron transmit an impulse action potential across a synaptic cleft to a postsynaptic neuron? Chemicals called neurotransmitters are involved in the transmission of impulses at these synapses. The axon terminal contain vesicles filled with neurotransmitter. When an impulse action potential arrived At the axon terminal, it stimulates the movement of synaptic vesicles toward the membrane, where they fuse with the plasma membrane of postsynaptic membrane, release their neurotransmitter in the synaptic cleft. The released neurotransmitter bind to their specific receptor present on the postsynaptic membrane. This binding opens ion channels along with the entry of ions. This binding opens ion channels, allowing the entry of ions which generate new potential in the postsynaptic neuron. The new potential developed may either be excitatory or inhibitory. This is the figure 21.3. This is axon terminal, synaptic vesicle, presynaptic, postsynaptic membrane, synaptic clefts. This is the receptor. Pre, post, and synaptic leaves together form synapse. Gap synaptic cleavage in chemical synapse is filled with fluid-filled space. Central nervous system. The brain is the central information processing organ of our body and act as a command and control system. It controls the voluntary movement, balance of the body, function of vital involuntary organs, example lungs, heart, kidney, etc. Thermoregulation, hunger, thirst, circadian 24-hour rhythms of our body, activity of several endocrine glands, human behavior. It is also the site of processing of vision, hearing, speech, memory, intelligence, emotion, and thoughts. The human brain is well protected by a skull. Inside the skull, the brain is covered by cranial meninges, consisting of an outer layer called dura mater and very thin middle layer called arachnoid, and the inner layer which is in contact with brain tissue called pia mater. The brain can be divided into three major parts: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Cranial meninges can be remembered by the mnemonics Pia आज दूर मत जाना Pia meter, contact with the brain tissue, arachnoid, and durameter. Durameter दूर to durameter. Forebrain. The forebrain consists of cerebrum, thalamus, and hypothalamus. Cerebrum forms the major part of the human brain. A deep clip divides the cerebrum longitudinally into two halves, which are termed as left and right cerebral hemisphere. The hemispheres connected by tract of nerve fiber called corpus callosum. The layer of cells which cover the cerebral hemisphere is called cerebral cortex and is thrown into prominent fold. The cerebral cortex is referred to as gray matter due to its grayish appearance. The neuron cell bodies are concentrated here, giving the color. The cerebral cortex contain motor areas, sensory areas, and the large regions that are neither clearly sensory nor motor in function. These regions called as association areas and are responsible for complex functions like intersensory association, memory, and communication. Fibers of tract are covered with myelin sheath, which constitute the inner part of cerebral hemisphere. They give an opaque white appearance to the layer, hence called white matter. The cerebrum wraps around a structure called thalamus, which is the major coordinating center for sensory and motor signaling. Thalamus is the major coordinating center for sensory and motor signaling. Another very important part of the brain is brain called hypothalamus lies at the base of the thalamus. The hypothalamus contains a number of centers which control body temperature, urge of eating and drinking. It also contains several groups of neurosecretory cells which secrete hormones called hypothalamic hormone. The inner part of cerebral hemisphere and a group of associated deep structure like amygdala, hippocampus form a complex structure called the limbic lobe or limbic system. Along with the hypothalamus, it involves in regulation of sexual behavior, exploration of emotional reaction, example excitement, pleasure, rage, and fear and motivation. Midbrain. The midbrain is located between the thalamus and hypothalamus of the brain and pons of the hindbrain. The canal called cerebral aqueduct passes through the midbrain. The dorsal portion of the midbrain consists of mainly four round of swelling lobes called corpora quadrigemia. Here you can see that corpora quadrigemia, four lobes of midbrain. Hindbrain. The hindbrain comprises pons, cerebellum, Also called medulla oblongata. Bones consist of fiber tract that interconnect different regions of the brain. Cerebellum has very convoluted surface in order to provide additional space for many more neurons. The medulla of the brain is connected to the spinal cord. The medulla contains center which control respiration, gastrovascular reflexes, gastric secretion. Three major region make up the brainstem: midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Brainstem from the connection between brain and spinal cord. That's it for NEET 2026 syllabus.